So I don't know whether you remember that. Here it is midnight at 3, and the time is 3:10. So speaking about Kashmir and right of self-determination, I don't know what to say. I've spoken many times, and it's a story of betrayal and blunders. Betrayal by Indian government, whom people of Kashmir trusted when their first prime minister in Lal Chowk said that the issue of Kashmir will be decided by Kashmiris. Betrayal by United Nations, where India took the case, and it was decided that right of self-determination will be held and Kashmiris will be given a chance whether they want to accede to India or Pakistan or they want to stay independent. Betrayal by its own leaders, Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah is the prime culprit who was instrumental in compromising the right of self-determination. Because when, for his own lust for power, he compromised with Indian government and told innocent Kashmiris that he will be working on the right of self-determination with Indian government. And people of Kashmir themselves, when they participated on these fake elections just to elect Sheikh Abdullah as the chief minister of Kashmir. In 1975, when Sheikh Abdullah signed a defeatist accord with India, because told by his kith and kin that he is approaching the ripe age, let them take the power and accumulate wealth for themselves and for their generations. And people of Kashmir, instead of lynching him in public, because I have been told, let us be free and frank. So whatever I say, it will be a bitter truth. Accepted him with open arms. He was welcomed in Kashmir. Betrayal by successive Pakistani governments who didn't basically take the Kashmir issue, dealt with Kashmir to internationalize it to the level that it would appear as a crisis. When Kashmiris realized that India's intentions are not true, because in earlier days, Kashmir had its own prime minister. It had a Sadr Riyasat. And lot of Kashmiri, the Indians' laws would not be applicable to Kashmir. Till in early 50s, if I am correct, at the airport, there used to be a custom officer. And the people who were visiting from India, they had to go through the customs officer, it was basically, it was construed that this is not part of India. What India did on the contrary, they extended these laws by and by, duping Sheikh Abdullah at that time and the people of Kashmir. It was in early 89 and 1990 when youth of Kashmir, headed by leaders like Yasin Malik, Ashfaq Majid, Abdul Hamid, and so on and so forth, were responsible for initiating a movement to pressurize India that it has to fulfill its commitment to the people of Kashmir. Some of them took their arms, yes. There's a violence. And people of Kashmir believed that this is the only way they can attract international attention and move on the path of freedom. What India did, it responded with brute force. There were many incidents like Gaukadal, when people were massacred, when Maulana Muhammad Farooq, the father of current Mirwais, was assassinated by Indian intelligence agencies. And when his body was taken and people were fired upon, they ran helter-skelter, and in the melee, hundreds of people were massacred. They kill the people with impunity. Until now, about 2 years ago, we were saying about 130,000 Kashmiris have been massacred. There's a good report about it, came out 3 years ago, and Khurram Parvez, the human rights activist, has done a painstaking job in reporting the incidents where people were killed brutally. There are women, about 10,000 to 15,000 women have been gang raped. And notable among them is the story of Kundan-Poshpora, where a village was basically encircled by Rashtra rifles. And the men were taken out and they went into the houses and raped a woman ranging from 10 to 80 years old. There's a book written by 5 young lawyers, which is Kundan-Poshpora, and they describe those incidents. There are mass graves in Kashmir. That's a crime against humanity. If we can approach the International Court of Justice, the authorities in India can be prosecuted for war crimes. This was done not by a Pakistani, not by anybody else, by a Hindu professor with Indian origins, Angana Chatterjee, from University of San Francisco. And with the aid of local lawyer Parvez Imroz, they found a lot of mass graves, about 10,000 or 20,000 people who were buried in them. And what they say, that this was the tip of iceberg, because when Indian government got whiff of it, Professor Chatterjee was booted out and is not allowed to go to India. Probably if they said longer, they would have discovered more such incidents. We have those disappeared people whose spouses are called as half widows, and they're demanding the answer whether their people, their relatives or husbands or brothers or fathers are alive or are dead, where they, what happened to them. But there is no answer from the Indian government. And now, say August 5th, they removed the abrogated Article 370. What they did, they had intelligence reports of the children or young men who were involved in fighting for right of self-determination. They picked them from their homes and they have been transferred to various jails of Kashmir. They don't know where they are. There's an incident that one of them, the parents went to Agra and he was told he's not there. Then he went to pillar to post, spending all their finances on locating their wards. Now, Mr. Zishan tells me he's working for Mr. Abdul Qayyum, previous president of J&K Bar. The person is sick with one kidney and diabetic situation. He was imprisoned in Agra jail and then into Delhi's Tihar jail for months and months. I think within the 2 months or so, he was released. There are 10,000 to 15,000 people, young people from Kashmir still who are in Indian prisons. To speak bluntly, there's no international pressure on India. A few months ago, they used to off and on an article, but the world is silent. The thing is that we cannot achieve this goal without the help of Pakistan. It is a utopian dream. But Pakistan, successive governments of Pakistan have not taken this issue aggressively, have failed to internationalize this issue. There was a Kashmir committee headed by Maulana Fazl Rahman. And I was with him in Islamabad a few years ago. I think it was 2014 or 15. And to my utter dismay, he expressed helplessness, telling that Pakistan has been labeled as a terrorist and our writ doesn't apply. That was the most damaging statement. If this is the case, he doesn't have any run, he has ran out of ideas. I think why should he be holding that post? Pakistan, the problem is you cannot take a whole demonstration in Lahore or Islamabad or Azad Kashmir and do all the chest thumping and everything on Kashmir issue and think that it will be solved. No, it will not be solved in that way. India doesn't give two hoots about that. There has been new Kashmir committee constituted in the Imran Khan government. I had an opportunity to speak on Zoom about 6 months ago with the gentleman, I'm forgetting his name, Mr. Khan. Afridi. He explained his detailed plan, but I don't see any action. There should be a committees formed, and what just I told to Mr. Afridi, from Pakistani erstwhile diplomats, and there is no dearth of these people, and to formulate a strategy. Because right now, India, whatever they do, recently 3 youth were picked up who were not involved in anything. And they were martyred, and the helpless father, it is heart-wrenching, had to bury the son himself, dig a grave for him. And India is getting away with it. Because Pakistan has not been able or doesn't have that strong intention to internationalize this issue. Because unless and until India faces the consequences of its actions, it will continue to do this, especially the present government. People criticize the present government a lot. It's the fastest government, no question. But erstwhile governments or Congress governments didn't treat us with the kid gloves. 130,000 people were massacred under their watch. The gang rapes happened in their watch. Mass graves were discovered under their watch. Pakistan doesn't have strategy. I told them many times, Mushahid Hussain, so many, you need a short-term strategy and long-term strategy. And you need to evaluate this long-term strategy. Where did we succeed? Where did we fail? The OIC was recently held. There's a 2-liner on Kashmir. Nothing about the present situation. And why did negotiation take place at the last moment? On the insistence of Shah Mahmud Qureshi, Kashmir was included, otherwise they were not including Kashmir. And there's not a huge mention. I have gone through that report. Now, next session will be held in Pakistan next year. But what is their strategy? Shah Mahmud Qureshi, the foreign minister of Pakistan, should not be speaking about Kashmir and Multan. He should carry dossiers, and other things with him and move from one capital to another, explaining the Kashmir situation. India will not come to negotiating table unless and until they have international pressure. Global situation is changing. India is becoming a frontline state for war against China. America is coming closer to India because of these geopolitical strategies. India is purchasing billions and billions of dollars of arms from China and Australia. We have to devise a strategy in the current situation. I am really shocked, even Pakistani press, because I watch Pakistani channels regularly, is not giving that kind of coverage to Kashmir issue. I was disappointed. About a few months ago, they gave a huge coverage to one of the channels, Bollywood actor who committed suicide. But they don't have time to give exhaustive details of the situation in Kashmir. As one of the Pakistani diplomats, I will not name it, in the United States told me that ultimately Kashmir issue will have to be decided by the war. International community doesn't pay attention unless you create a situation of crisis. And to them, Kashmir right now doesn't present a crisis-like situation. They should try to explain that you have 3 nuclear powers in the region. And with China being on the doorsteps of Ladakh, if there is any border skirmishes, it can result into a nuclear disaster. And that is not happening in Pakistan. Pakistani politicians are busy in pulling the rug out of each other so that they come to power. And I'm shocked that now Kashmir is being used for a domestic agenda. There is power. They will basically sue Imran Khan against basically not raising the Kashmir issue, compromising the Kashmir issue. I don't want to deal with any other political stage internal. That is the internal matter of Pakistan. For us, all the political parties are same. But I would try, it puts a salt on my wounds when he issued that statement. What did his government do when they were in power for Kashmir? His Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif went to New Delhi when Modi was supposed to soar in 2014. He retained his leaders. He invited Modi to his house. Did they raise Kashmir issue fervently? No. And same, this government is doing the same thing. We met Imran Khan about 1.5 years and talking to him. His last departing statement was that he will be ambassador for the Kashmir. We have the top leadership of Pakistan. It is all talk, talk, and talk, and talk. There is no action. Now, Pakistan has good relationship with Turkey. Turkey, also President Erdogan, once or twice, he raised the issue of Kashmir. Why is not there a joint parliamentary committee between Pakistan and Turkey? And they visit all the Muslim countries or European countries and explain them the situation in Kashmir, give them the information. It is not, the time is of the essence. I was told by my relatives in Kashmir that it is a plan to pick up the youth and kill them whenever possible. And this thing will continue. Earlier days, what would happen if there was some, what they call as cross-firing, they used to demolish that house. Nowadays, they demolish the whole locality. They are fervently pursuing the policies which will allow the demographic changes in Kashmir. All Pakistan is doing, inviting India. India will not come to talks. Let us understand, that is a futile exercise. India has no intention. You have to work. You have to form a committee which will aggressively pursue the policy of internationalizing this Kashmir issue. Highlight the kind of human rights violations which are taking place in Kashmir. Yes, borders should be heated up because then it should be world may think about it. I'm not impressed by calm borders. There should be a looming threat of nuclear war. Then only it will get the attention of Kashmiris. India doesn't understand the language of peace. Unless these things happen, I'm afraid whole complexion will be changed. Kashmir will not be represent the current form. That is their plan. And we have to be hyper aggressive in pursuing the policy. Pakistan has to walk the talk. We are fed up of words and statements. Allah Kashmir ko azad karega. Kaise azad karega? Are they waiting for divine intervention? As a Muslim, we believe in divine intervention, but that is not of our choosing. Kashmiris are dying. Kashmiris are killed. Now they celebrate these occasions like for ceremonial occasions. 5th February, Kashmir Day. This thing, Indian Occupation Day. And we have these webinars and other things. During 22nd October, there were about 300 webinars. What came out of those webinars? Did we form any plan of action? There is no black day. Every day in Kashmir is a black day. We cannot restrict the problem of Kashmir just for discussions and then saying, then leaving aside. Unless these discussions formulate into a strategy, I think it is a futile exercise. I don't know what to say. I have been too blunt. There has to be, in Pakistan, there has to be a national policy on Kashmir. And that is not happening. These people, there are political differences. There will be political difference, that's fine. But Kashmir issues, there should be a national policy. They should set aside their internal squabbles. All they say, Kashmir is our jugular vein. If Kashmir is the jugular vein, yes, it will call for sacrifices. And Kashmiri people have given them. They have given 130 or 140,000 of their youth who are between the ages of 15 to 30. They are lying in their graves and killed mercilessly. They have sacrificed the honor of their daughters and mothers. What has Pakistan done? Okay, there is a border skirmishes going on and few of their jobs, that's okay. But if you take Kashmir, is your jugular vein, we expect much, much more for them. I don't know what else to say. What we are treading on a dangerous path. We are pursuing the policies which will be advantageous for India, which will allow India to extend their draconian laws and basically annex the Kashmir. It will allow India to change the demographic character from making it from a Muslim majority to Muslim minority. And then they can tell the international community that we can basically have the plebiscite, and so that decision is manipulated in their favor. Pakistan has to wake from slumber. Their political parties, as far as Kashmir is concerned, should speak with one voice. Kashmir committee, I saw there are 3 or 4 members. I told Mr. Afridi that where are the diplomats, former diplomats? Like Mr. Jahangir, so on and so forth. There are a bunch of them. Do you have any strategy? That is the problem. You cannot be a silent spectator and issue a statement and then think that will solve the problem. They should not make Kashmir as an agenda item to pull each other's legs to achieve their political designs. They have to take this issue with one voice, make a policy, both the ruling party as well as the opposition, and devise some kind of strategy. It is going to United Nations. United Nations is a toothless tiger. It has no teeth. It is being used by United States whenever they want to fulfill their objective, like Iraq war or so. For powerful countries, United Nations doesn't do anything. We have submitted reports of those reports to United Nations. I have myself gone with Dr. Ghulam Nabi Fai and a few other people to United Nations. We have submitted this report by Khurram Parvez. What India does, they tell India that if we want to send a delegation. India tells no. Thank you, but no thank you. And there they stop. No foreign press is involved, nothing is. And OIC, it issues a statement, India condemns it and denies it, that's all. Every year in October, Pakistani Prime Minister comes, he speaks, and Indian Prime Minister speaks, and they basically condemn each other, and there is a rejoinder, and the matter is closed. Right present in Kashmir, there is no leadership. Hurriyat has been almost decapitated. Gilani Saab is 6, he's in his 90s with number of ailments. Yasin Malik is in jail. Shabir Shah is in jail. And people of Kashmir, people don't know what to do. India is hurting them economically. There are cases where the orchards have been burnt. They don't allow tourism to flourish. And here, there is a lot of drug problem, which will be started by, there are Indian agents who are starting it to spread what they did in Punjab. So the youth get addicted to these drugs. India is using a multi-pronged approach to suppress the people of Kashmir, to demolish the youth of Kashmir, to decimate them. And there is a Indo-Israeli collaboration, and they are taking the cue from these people. And Kashmiris have been left alone. And unless and until their hope is only Pakistan. Unless Pakistan becomes proactive, and with few other Muslim countries or countries which are supportive, like China, like Turkey. I asked this question to Senator Mushahid Hussain. What is the policy of China about Kashmir? What do they think, apart from their interest in Ladakh? And he was not sure about it. So I don't know whether my time is over. I don't know what else to speak. So it is no success without strategy. That is the slogan. And Kashmir issue cannot be restricted to these ceremonial occasions. That, okay, what are we doing for 5th February? What are we doing for 5th January? What are we doing for these March, July 13 or 27th October? There has to be sustained pressure at international level. And we cannot talk about now, we are having 4 Kashmiris, 2 Pakistanis, and talk about and then say, okay, we condemn India. That's not going to solve. That's okay. You can do all the chest thumping and basically speak all the saber rattling and other things. That will not take us anywhere. That will not change the ground reality of Kashmir. Till now, we have to realize whatever we have done, that has not changed the ground reality of Kashmir. Thank you very much for hearing. And
thank you so much, Dr. Imtiaz Khan, for your insightful views on the Kashmir issue and the Indian atrocities against the Kashmiri people, and also giving the valuable suggestion for the resolution of the Kashmir issue. Now I would like to invite Dr. Asif Maqbool Dar. Dr. Asif Maqbool Dar is a medical doctor by profession based in Middle East. Dr. Dar has emerged as a vocal voice who calls spade a spade in the Kashmiri diaspora community. He has been regularly warning Kashmiris through his social media accounts against falling into a trap of military regime of India in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Over to you, Dr. Dar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for giving me the chance. I might not agree to everything Mr. Imtiaz, Dr. Imtiaz put in, but it was a very emotional lecture coming directly from the heart. I have some reservations regarding the thoughts. Would it not have been about the Pakistan, Kashmiris would have been worse than Palestinians. We might not be better than the Palestinians, but we are not as bad. The people of Pakistan, let's be very clear about it. The intentions on ground from the people of Pakistan have been very clear. We love them and they love us. There might have been occasionally some problem from those who are sitting on the chair, but grossly, the Pakistan has shown a great determination in last 70 years. Considering the brute Indian occupation of last 72 years, it seems, would it not have been for the Pakistan, Indians would have run over Kashmiris all along. I would like to keep my things to the paper because I don't want to speak something. I want to use this platform to warn, to inform the world what the Kashmiris are going through right now and what this right of self-determination means to us. Not merely as an enshrined right in the international law, or not only a vehemently upheld principle on the well-written UN charters. This is a basic human principle of profound importance. The colossal denial of this right by the state of India imposed upon us Kashmiris has led us all come here and talk about it. If there was no denial, we will not be talking about it today. We all know the denial has caused the catastrophe that we are talking about. Because the right is always natural, its denial hence is unnatural and always needs the brute military, political and economic force to maintain the legs of this denial. This is what 700,000 forces of various kinds are doing in Kashmir. That is maintaining this denial, showing the unwanted down the throats of Kashmiris, using nothing but brute military muscles. So all this is never inconsequential. This has landed Kashmir into a pretty bad humanitarian catastrophe. That is what we are talking about here, the pitiful distress state of Kashmir. We are being told open by the propagandists of Indian state, the Sheikh Abdullah, chose 7 decades back, exercises this right on the behalf of all. Do we see the humor and tragedy in it? This right by all standard understanding is a collective right, not an individual's myopic whim. This is the right of all peoples, majorities, minorities, ethnicities, religions, castes, and creed living within a territorial geography to sit together and exercise their divine and natural power of absolute self-determination. All power denying this right clearly and into definition fall into the definition of oppressors, thieves, and transgressors. Yes, I'm calling India a thief. Right away, right here, and from day one, I have been calling this. We Kashmiris have not trespassed into somebody's geography. How can a self-respecting population with a little sense of dignity tolerate the forced ingression into theirs? So the fight to achieve this right becomes resistance. Since the right is so fundamental to life of people, the resistance process to attain fundamental paramountness in their lives has crossed all limits. This is what this process is all about. As people resisted, the denial got more cancerous. Abrogation of the article on 5th August 2019 is part of that denial. People are denied of being agency in their own lives, but it doesn't stop there. Cancer grows deep. Its military necessity creeps inside like fingers of metastatic cancer. It no longer merely remains an external denial of choice. It has grown inside on most forms of human life expression. For example, the pathetic denial of funerals in news these days. 3 boys killed, all the rebels killed post 5th August. The bodies are stolen and buried somewhere in the jungles. This process of denial to families of their most basic right and upheld right to bury even on barbarian standards is internal denial of self-determination. Since all forms of politics except pro-India are a crime, funerals served as last form of political expression. There is tragedy in it, but it's true. People thought perhaps funerals are last safe forms of political expression, but it has been taken away now. There is little left now. Army, I mean the battle-ready army. Combat troops are everywhere. It can barge into anyone's personal, private sphere of life, even in your bedrooms, just in 2 minutes. The web of spider is everywhere in all dimensions. A slight movement from this trapped insect called Kashmir brings military wrath on them. This is true, unfortunately, about all houses in Kashmir. Kashmir is a fish trapped in net of military. It withs to escape, but ends up only bleeding itself. There is unbearable suffocation, but there is no escape. So denial of self-determination has gathered now the most intimate meaning. But then out of all this enormous military squish, and I happen to recollect couplets of Sahir Lodhivani. जुल्म तो फिर जुल्म है, बढ़ता है तो मिट जाता है, खून तो फिर खून है, टपकेगा तो जम जाएगा. तुमने जिस खून को मक्तल में दबाना चाहा, आज वो कोचे बाजार में आ निकला है. कहीं शोला, कहीं नारा, कहीं पत्थर बनकर, खून चलता है तो रुकता नहीं संगीनों से. सर उठाता है तो दबता नहीं आईनों से. जुल्म की बात ही क्या, जुल्म की औकात ही क्या, जुल्म बस जुल्म है आगाज से अंजाम तलक. In all this, hope does not cease. People don't stop to dream. Hearts don't give up to fight. Sometimes things become too intolerable and people defy the instinct to remain alive. Their last night and hit on streets. Some pick weapons, some form plebiscite forms, hurriyats, liberation fronts, fulfill long denied natural right. There happens unpredictable cycles, intifadas, violent, non-violent resistance that sprout out of this tremendous military presence. It's almost impossible, but it happens. But silence, never to give up. Kashmir is in persistent war for most of us. It began when we assumed the office of breathing, and it may end when we retire from life. It's always challenging for many of us to live within this conflict all the time. Many times the urgency of escaping its pressure sets in. Some people escape it and switch sides or retire before time, which we call as betrayal or cowardice. However, the reality is that it is near impossible to escape it forever without creating a person in you that you will yourself spit on the mirror. It's a magnetic whirlpool that drags in every sensitive human being. Unless someone is an insensitive stone, dead leather, indifferent to human suffering, it's not possible not to be accurately struck of its impact. The latest upcoming denial of self-determination is the brazen attempt of Indian state to change the demographic structure of state. Kashmir has a certain historic character that is maintained in colonial and pre-colonial phases. Now situation is being created in which the right to exist in the character is being threatened. This denial and action counter to the people's will probably be worst of all denials. Kashmir can no longer stay Kashmir as it is, rather it must be synthesized as per the fancies of Hindu colonizers. This is the challenge that has been thrown on our face right now. Dare to exist. The old talks of glorious past, the historic continuity, the culture, the language, all are at the brink of forced extinction. The lack of choice also leads to cultural destruction and stagnation of civilization. Historic communication with Pakistani people, Afghans, Central Asia, China is broken. Ancient, age-old trusted trade routes are occupied. A culture that once called small Persia is now world's worst military garrison. The art, the fancy, the imagination, the intricate poetry is all gone. It has been replaced by mourning shrieks, gloom and pain. Language is occupied. Everything is slowly being saffronized. Value system is in threat. Religious freedom is minimal. Worst form of denial of self-determination is occupation, and worst form of occupation is denial of life. In all this hopelessness, people don't stop to dream. They don't lose hope totally. Some believe one day we'll be able to fight back. Some hope that Pakistan will rescue them. Some believe a natural calamity will break India's backbone. Some believe they will get tired and leave. Dreams are there alive among people. So people continue to resist in some form or the other. Visible or invisible, people will resist probably for win or probably for the loss, like Andalusian Muslims. Fight for self-determination has acquired new meanings today. It means fight for existence right now. I may have gotten emotional at some point of time while I was reading this, but this is our reality. We are suffering. We might we might be a gone nation if we don't resist right now. We need to stand up together, and Pakistan needs to hold our hand. It's it's the will. It's the will we live together. It's the will we die together. Kashmir's existence, the existence of Kashmir is as important to Pakistan as its own self. If Kashmir does not exist, this fanatics, this Hindu fantasies of greater Bharat are not going to stop here. They will come for each one of us, whether in Kashmir, whether in Pakistan. Pakistan needs to stand with us, and we need to stand with Pakistan to move out of this. Thank you very much for my time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asif, for for sharing your views on today's topic, that is Kashmir struggle for the right to self-determination. Now I would like to invite Dr. Hamida Naeem. She is a civil society leader in Indian occupied Kashmir, who is a professor at University of Kashmir. Professor Naeem has been raising issues which concern the local population of Kashmir for long, and has been vocal, seeking basic and fundamental rights of Kashmiris. Dr. Hamida Naeem will speak on the current situation in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Floor is yours, ma'am. Dr. Hamida.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum to everybody who is around and allow, and I'm emotional. I just can't do it. For the last 1.5 years, things have become so bad that I've forgotten how to speak. That is the state of affairs in Kashmir today, because we have been silenced, gagged, besieged, and put in the concentration camp where we are completely powerless. And that's why it has almost devoiced us today. And today when I thought I'll say something, and because I've spoken so much in the last 30 years, but for the last 2 years, I have been deliberately trying to forget everything so that I could survive to see the end of this all. And that's why today I jotted down some points. I'll not speak because I don't know where I'll go, because it become terribly emotional. I'm thankful to Imtiaz Saab that he has already drawn a panoramic picture of whatever has happened here, especially in the last 30 years and before that. And then I'm also thankful to the next speaker, who has given broad contours of the right to self-determination and its definitions, and emotional, and he has become as emotional as I am for what has been done to us. But I will give an overall view today of what BJP has been up to, how it has, against all principle of justice, democracy, freedom, and human values, it has gone after this dark fantasy to decimate Kashmir completely, particularly, and Indian Muslims in general. That's why I'll just try to read few things which I have jotted down, and hope you will not get bored. The struggle for the right to self-determination since 1947 has consumed generations of Kashmiris and led to the colossal, unspeakable sufferings and tragedies over the years, as has amply been demonstrated by Imtiaz Saab, its various facets. So much so that the worst legendary sufferings inflicted on Kashmiris by earlier foreign rulers pale into insignificance by comparison. And this at the hands of a country which calls herself the largest democracy on earth, which respects the will of the people. Because the essence of democracy is respect to the will of the people. To cut the cackle and come to horses directly, to dilute, scuttle, and obfuscate the struggle for Kashmiri's struggle for the right to self-determination. BJP RSS combined tried to bury this struggle by snatching away all our rights. Congress governments had linked the enjoyment of daily freedoms and rights to loyalty to neo-imperialist regime. But the current regime snatched rights of all Kashmiris, irrespective of their loyalty to Delhi government and these parties, NC, PDPs before you. Because the essence of this agenda of dispossession, delegitimization, and genocide is our being Muslims and their revenge, to take revenge for the 1,000 years of Muslim rule in India from us. RSS had for a long time since partition harbored the dark fantasy and wild passions of subjugating Kashmiri Muslims and restoring the so-called past glory of Hindu kingdom of pre-Islamic times. They have made it very clear in many of their lectures, especially their leaders. The so-called past glory, which never actually existed, because it was a decadent culture at the time that Islam could find it so easy to spread itself at the time. Since BJP came to power, it has been propagating the disruption of all agreed upon historical truths and the grand narratives of freedom, justice, secularism, and genuine democratic spirit, and promoting instead what they call post-truth, post-ideology, meta-narrative of satisfaction of their emotions. In this dark enterprise, they have taken help from postmodernism, which was already there, which had become a Lloydian meta-narrative, a Foucauldian system of discursive power, and a Derridian oppressive hierarchy. Those who know this critical terminology understand what I am trying to say. These postmodernist thinkers and theorists have tried to go against the major narratives of modernism, of freedom, of justice, of truth, and tried to scuttle it down, to make it apolitical, to make it amoral, to make it ahistorical, and therefore make history also kind of intellectual luxury, which has nothing to do with the referential truth as it obtains outside the world. Whatever was the objective of these philosophers of later half of the 20th century, they have been misappropriated by BJP RSS ideologues for the fulfillment of their darkest anti-Muslim fantasies. Though their views have been long discarded and rejected as amoral, apolitical, and ahistorical, as they were by implication, undercutting the grand narratives of human rights, freedom, justice, and truth, which were standardized by the UN Charter of Human Rights in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights after World War II. And as you say, the Trump administration has been their ally, and it has given full support to them in doing what they have done in this dark enterprise. Trump was fully behind their back. Because besides other things, besides other human rights, it in particular gives right to self-determination to communities and nations to choose a future of their own choice, and has criminalized forcible occupation against the will of the people. Edward Said was the first person to penetrate deeper into these theories and express them for what they were in his book, The World, the Text, and the Critic, as early as 1983. They tried to delegitimize through narrative violence all kinds of discourses, what I call the regime of discourses. Discourses about Kashmir which falsified its history altogether, which falsify its civilization, which falsify its identity. It talks about Kashmir minus its people, as if people don't exist. Hermeneutic violence, how they interpret history, how they interpret historical facts. In the recently, how they interpreted temporary, for example, which was connected with Article 370, and falsification of history and vilification of Muslims, and incremental genocide of an entire community. And both of the speakers have given reference to the 2 days back genocidal attempt at the lives of 3 people who were on the roadside. They were picked up and killed and then dubbed as, and this is part of a pattern. It's a big pattern. This is not an isolated instance. It follows in that incremental genocidal pattern in which slowly people will be wiped out from the fair face of this Kashmir. They have achieved new refinements of horror and new depths of degradation in dehumanizing Kashmiris, which is intolerable to thought and odious to the soul. You know, it is not only one agency which has been kept off of people. On the one hand, there is security agencies. On the other hand, to break the back and to terrorize people completely, you have ED, you have NIA, you have IT, you have all these agencies who have been put after people. Because people say, why Kashmiris don't rise in rebellion? They forget completely that we have been almost kept in Noah's Ark, totally shut out from the world. And all kinds of dirty deeds are being done, inflicted on us. The world knows nothing of. I'm sorry to say, when the news comes from Kashmir, it is so factually incorrect. I can't tell you. And the kind of, and Imtiaz Sahab was very right, their perception of Kashmir situation is completely abysmal. The kind of news they do, in the interpretation they give, they don't understand what Article 370 is in reality. They say, wo article hai na, wo hataya gaya. They don't know what all this is about. Sorry to say all this. Article 370 and 35A abrogation was no mere, Article 370 or 35A was no mere provision enacted by the Constituent Assembly of India. It confirmed a temporary accession only on 3 subjects: defense, foreign affairs, and communications. The state would retain the residual sovereignty in all other matters till the dispute is resolved by holding plebiscite. And therefore, by abrogating Article 370, you have buried the struggle for right to self-determination, because it was not in isolation of that. It was a sacred Solomon pact negotiated over 5 months between the 2 sovereign governments. People forget about it when the Indians say, because another thing has been, another thing has been a kind of linguistic imperialism. The kind of language they use, it carries their ideology, which is far from truth. It carries their interpretation of reality. It gives their biased knowledge, which is far from truth. And therefore, when they say special status has been given to Kashmir, they have not given any special status. It was the 2 governments who had come at an agreement, in spite of the fact that most Kashmiris interrogate the accession itself. But whatever it was a conditional, temporary accession only on 3 things. In rest of the matters, we have residual sovereignty. But what Indian government did from time to time, they arrogated themselves the right to extend all other rights from the Indian government, which is blatantly deceptive and blatantly a fraud and blatantly a treason. That is why it was so much hollowed down by the time it was abrogated. But then you'll say, then why are we against, terribly against? Why do we take it as a denial of our existence? Why do we take it as a denial of identity? Because it was a solemn, sacred pact which guaranteed us the right to self-determination till the when matter is resolved. It was temporary in the sense that this will be in the Indian constitution only as long as matter is there. Once the dispute is resolved, then it will not exist anymore in the Indian constitution. This is what Pakistanis don't understand. By virtue of this, what happened? When Kashmir Constituent Assembly was framing its constitution, Nehru prevailed upon the Constituent Assembly that they should adopt the chapter of fundamental rights from Indian constitution into Kashmir constitution. And the problem with that is, if they adopt it like that, it was also deceptive, then all Indians will become equally claimant on the land and jobs in Kashmir. And the people at the time who were in the government, who understood what it meant. And then they said, no, we cannot take it because its implication is like this. Because we have a state subject law which was brought in by Hari Singh in 1927, which bars outsiders from either buying land or possessing land or having jobs in Kashmir. Now, Nehru agreed at that time, and he brought in 370. It's a long discussion between Constituent Assembly and in the Indian Parliament. Finally, they agreed to insert Article 35A as a protective shield against the intrusion of Indians into Kashmir. Now, by removing Article 370, and simultaneously 35A, which derived its existence from 370, they have in one stroke destroyed our state. They have taken out everything, but once you destroy it, then there is nothing. You are not only like any other Indian state, you have been reduced Indian Union territory, which is a euphemism for a colony. Now, after removing 370, we could have easily become free because that was the mutual pact. Once you unilaterally remove it, the result is Kashmir should have become free on its own. That's why immediately they brought in another bill, reorganizing the state, destroying the statehood, and then dividing it into two territories. And it is complete plunder, grab of territory, complete. Which Pakistan doesn't understand where we have now come. This is a disaster situation. We have been put on the edge. This is complete denial of our existence, complete devastation of our identity, complete devastation of our land. Now, after that, they brought in domicile law. What does domicile law initially? And it was at the height of COVID days, because during that time they brought in maximum land laws, which are actually gradually dispossessing us from our land. The latest being that security forces can take any piece of land which they think is good for their security purposes. So tomorrow they will lay claim on your house. They will say this serves our security purposes better. So you'll have to vacate it, come here. So domicile law and further laws, and on the 15th August 2020, Modi opened it for all. He said this Kashmir booty is now free for all. It's a booty from war. We have won. And it's free for all. Anyone can come now and buy land here. And already they have made a land bank here. In the last 5 years, they have been collecting details about the government land, and lakhs of canals are already in their possession, and they will be distributing it among their. It's not that they will, distribute among favorites. They will have to settle people here. It is a long cherished Hindu agenda, and Pakistan should have been on fire for all this. But look at them. Their political parties are actually helping India in creating a kind of chaotic situation today. Today, they should have been all together in supporting Kashmir. As Imtiaz Saab rightly says, cacophony will not take us anywhere. Ritualistic marking of days is not going to take it. It is not going to do anything to India. They laugh at it. What is actually doing is providing, as he rightly said, a strategy in place concerned, well thought out, serious, result oriented, which hasn't happened so far. So sometimes your foolish friends are worse than your enemies. Today, they are not concerned about that Kashmir has been made a graveyard, that Kashmir is an extended concentration camp, that they are being killed, looted, their economy, everything being destroyed here. But they are not aware of that. They are वो बल्दियाती इंतखाबात में उलझे हुए हैं. I call them baldiyati. You don't want to watch their TV channels also, because no serious debates take place except this nonsense political parties ka kya hai idhar udhar. We don't expect them to do all this. So what I'm trying to say is that when they took this 370, it was impossible for them to extend any other law on Kashmir except through presidential promulgation with the concurrence of State Constituent Assembly. Since State Constituent Assembly was dissolved in 1957, the question of extension of any other law does not arise. Yet through fraud and deceit, they have extended all the law, maximum laws. What was left was protection to this 35A. In 370, we had one that right to property was there, untouched, and then this 335A, which barred Indians from entering, from buying or possessing land in Kashmir. Now they joined another narrative with it, feminist narrative, that women who marry outside do not get citizenship rights in Kashmir. That was also nonsense, because in 2002, High Court had already delivered a judgment in which that woman will not lose property rights in Kashmir if she marries outside. That was already a hollow narrative. So I said all kinds of narratives, because we don't have time to go into that. As I said, from Lloyd Todd, they built these little narratives here and there and consolidated them to push things against us, to falsify history, to falsify identity, to falsify everything. I don't know whether I have more time, but this needs to be said. What needs to be said, that the order under 370 is made with the concurrence of the center's appointee, legally, because आपका legal forum है. इसलिए मैं legally इस बात पर कह. Order under 370 which they made is made with the concurrence of the center's appointee. There it is written with the concurrence of the Constituent Assembly. One fraud on the pretext that he is the state government, because the state assembly was already dissolved. Because they had been making this plan for the last 5 years. Step-wise, Hurriyat leaders were step-wise removed from the scene, and character assassination was carried against them. They were already put in Tihar jail. So the field was emptied so that they can do this terrible thing. However, after 1951, state government had lost its interim power to accord any consent, but they still did. It now belongs to Constituent Assembly. Second, it turned the state assembly into Constituent Assembly. वहां तो लिखा है Constituent Assembly alone can give concurrence. Here on their own, arbitrarily, they are turning state assembly into Constituent Assembly earlier, but now state assembly is substituted by the Indian appointee, that is the governor. It turned the state assembly into Constituent Assembly, which was dissolved in this. With retrospective effect, the governor of the state is turned into the government of the state. ये देखिए legal frauds क्या है. It is full of legal frauds. Even then, nobody is questioning it. No, I mean, Pakistan is not raising these issues in the right sense. The bill reduces the ancient state of the Jammu and Kashmir to a union territory. I told you it's a euphemism for it's a full-fledged colony now. But when English people had colonies around the world, they will take good care of them. They will also work for their betterment. They will also give. But this colony thrives on complete militarization of our society, of our homes, of our every place. No place is left untouched by forces. The resolutions cap all this by substituting parliament for the legislature. and empowering parliament to give consent to itself. You are empowering parliament to give consent to itself. Sans Kashmiri people, what is missed is the will of the Kashmiri people. That is why these are all legal frauds. It will not stand the test of time, test of international legal standards, and it should have been taken to international court because we were semi-sovereign. It was only another push that we had to go into full sovereign state. But the basis has been removed, and through fraud, through deceit, and it is a dark fantasy BJP which had to be implemented, which had to be materialized, and nothing else. So much so that the government today can take any area for the security purposes, as I already said. In all this, I told you they were supported by Trump because already some leaks had come from the America, previous Secretary of State Rafael had told someone in America that they are going to remove 370. It was some months before she had told someone that they are going to remove, and with full support of the American government. Now today we have no hope except that what they have done so far, it is a complete recipe for dispossession, for the assassination of our Muslim identity, for complete demographic changes so that Kashmiris will be reduced to rare species and thrown into Jahannam anytime. You know, this is the agenda. But we hope, and we also understand there has to be finally a divine intervention, but it will not happen unless we make efforts. Today we have a huge responsibility, all of us together. Now you should not expect anything from Kashmiris who are besieged. It is the people who are the diaspora. They have to fight for a right. They have to fight for the full independence of Kashmir from all this. Not we people, because we are completely besieged and gagged and silenced. Now, new administration is coming in the US. It is the responsibility of the US and the Pakistan administration to make them understand completely what has happened and how it's a murder of humanity. It's a murder of all agreed upon universal, legal, democratic principles which has taken place. It's a legislative murder, it's a political murder, it's a legal murder, and therefore it needs to be reversed, and Kashmiris need to be given their rightful place in the Committee of Nations. I think Pakistan will wake up. Imtiaz Saab has completely unko jhanjoda hai achhi tarah se. So I hope they'll heed what he has said, and political parties will behave a little bit more responsibly at this time. Today, they seem to be carrying out the agenda of India, who are fighting against the government. They can have political differences, but today we see वो अपने मुल्क को भी नीलाम करेंगे इसी के साथ, वो ऐसा लग रहा है. इसलिए it is high time that we wake up to this reality and fight together to get a rightful place in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamida Naeem, for your valuable remarks and detailed analysis on the consequences of abrogation of Article 370 and the recent developments in the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ambassador Abdul Basit. He is a veteran Pakistani diplomat who has served in various important capitals in the world. His last assignment was Pakistan's High Commissioner to India, where he left a deliberate mark as how Pakistan should conduct its diplomacy with India on Kashmir. Ambassador Basit is a popular face and has earned high respect among the people of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir for his no-hold-barred stand on the Kashmir resistance movement. Ambassador Basit will speak on how Pakistan should move on the Kashmir issue in 2021. Over to you, Mr. Abdul Basit.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me and including me on this panel. It's a great privilege and honor for me to be speaking with such distinguished speakers. So thank you very much for giving me this honor. Actually, everything has already been said, and there is barely anything left for me to add. But by way of expressing my sentiments, let me say a few words. First of all, last year or in 2019, on 5th August, when India stripped occupied Jammu and Kashmir of its special status, at least I was not surprised, nor was I shocked, because we were all expecting that to happen sooner or later. And when I was the High Commissioner in New Delhi, I have been forewarning Islamabad that this was a foregone conclusion, and Pakistan should be having an all-encompassing, well-calibrated strategy, first to prevent India from going down that route, and secondly, if India moves in that direction, then Pakistan should have a strategy to how to counter that move effectively. But unfortunately, as previous speakers very rightly pointed out, Pakistan has not been up to the task, unfortunately, when it came to Kashmir. No doubt, there are serious issues involved. No doubt, Pakistan has its own limitations. No doubt, Pakistan polity is divided and terribly divided. But one thing is very clear, that there has always been national consensus in Pakistan when it came to Kashmir. But unfortunately, since 5th August 2019, we have not been able to put up a plan of action as to how we would counter the Indian move. We all know it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's against the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. We have been saying all these things, and we are aware of all these violations by India, India's state terrorism in occupied Kashmir, its draconian laws there, and how the valiant people of Jammu and Kashmir have been rendering massive sacrifices and fighting over 900,000 security forces is not an easy thing. And our hats off to the people of Jammu and Kashmir for putting up such a resistance that history will always remember. But the question is how to now move forward, and that question keeps I keep thinking as to. We have been talking a lot. We have been making hoary statements, which have now become sort of blasé as far as I am concerned. Pakistani leadership has been issuing statements, but what is beyond statements? That is the question which I ask myself, and I have been kind of discussing these things with many people in the government. I've had meetings with even officials in the government, how to proceed. But somehow I do not feel that passion and do not feel the desire to move in a well-calibrated manner. And here, I really can't say much. There's certain things which I can't discuss publicly. But important thing is to remember as to how Kashmiris are doing what Kashmiris need to do in occupied Kashmir. They are putting up an exemplary resistance. Now it comes down to Pakistan and Kashmiri diaspora, I think. Unfortunately, both Kashmiri diaspora and Pakistan have failed to come up with a well thought out strategy to put international pressure on India. And that is the crux of the matter in my view. And unless we are able to put international pressure on India, there is simply no possibility that India would show flexibility or understand or do something differently. And how we can put pressure on India, definitely governments around the world are not responding to our démarches, not responding to our pleas because they have commercial economic interests in India. They see India as a rising power. But this is an alibi, I think, for not doing or undertaking efforts in the context of Kashmir. We all understand that India does have far more clout than Pakistan. But this is not an excuse not to do anything on Kashmir. I think Pakistan and Kashmiri and Pakistani diaspora, we still have option. We still need to go out to the media, need to go out to think tanks around the world, need to wake up or to kind of reach out to society, civil society around the world, advocacy groups, NGOs, civil society organizations, and so on and so. I think we have not done anything, not enough on that count either. Important was to build pressure in different countries on their respective governments. And there we have, I think, failed terribly. But I still feel that we have a very strong legal case. We have a very strong political case, moral case. And if we still put our act together, still join hands, I still feel very strongly that we can do significantly better than what we have done so far. There is no collective effort in Pakistan either. And I can tell you that there is no strategy in place as such. We are moving in fits and starts. We are taking one action here and one action there, but there is no cohesive strategy in place to pursue this matter the way it deserves to be pursued. And that is unfortunate. But I'm sure that Kashmiris would not give up. They know that freedom is part and parcel of their lives. And then one thing is obviously there that there are black sheep among the Kashmiris as well, as we have seen the so-called Gupkar Alliance, Gupkar Declaration, or the Gupkar Alliance, whatever you call it. So we need to kind of, revisit the drawing board. More of the same would not work. We need to revisit the drawing board, weigh our options, what could be done, how the resistance in occupied Kashmir can be reorganized in all its dimensions, and how we can do things differently on the international front as well. Because we have been pinning high hopes on the United Nations, UN Human Rights Council, Organization for Islamic Conference, without realizing that these multilateral fora do not work in a vacuum. They respond to their interests. Decisions are not taken in New York or in Geneva or in Jeddah. Decisions by states are taken in their respective capitals. So Pakistan should have reached out bilaterally to states around the world rather than focusing only on multilateralism, which is without, it doesn't work, it doesn't deliver unless you have a strong bilateral relations. So Pakistan, I think since 5th August 2019, we have kind of, been in a state where we do not know how to get to grips with the situation, how to step up to the plate, and that is unfortunate. I have given a few proposals. For example, 1974 interim constitution of Azad Jammu and Kashmir should be amended. Its Article 2 should be amended so that it gives representation to the occupied people of Jammu and Kashmir. President of Azad Jammu and Kashmir needs to appoint a plebiscite advisor in terms of Article 11 of the Jammu and Kashmir, Azad Jammu and Kashmir interim constitution. Then we need to, I have given this proposal up times to the government to appoint a special envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, because neither foreign minister nor does the prime minister have time to put up all dimensions of the Kashmir struggle and together. So especially in why we should give that importance to to this cause. And unless we have a special envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, how can we expect the world to attach the same importance which you want the international community to give to this cause? So I think we have many gaps here and there which need to be plugged. And we do need to have a focal point on Jammu and Kashmir in Pakistan. Yes, we do have a parliamentary committee on Kashmir, but we have seen how this committee has worked during the last several years, doing nothing and wasting its time and resources. And I would still strongly feel that we still have time, though we have lost much on the ground, but we should not leave, or we should not allow pessimism to creep in. This is what India wants. India wants the people of Jammu and Kashmir to think that there is no other way except to continue to be part of India. It is also putting pressure on Pakistan through Afghanistan on the line of control as well. So India's strategy is very clear. They are working along the lines of, or they are implementing their strategy as was articulated by their National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Defensive Offense Doctrine, and they are working methodically to put pressure on Pakistan in the context of terrorism. Then they have succeeded in projecting the legitimate Kashmiri struggle as terrorism, as we have seen how the US proscribed Hizbul Mujahideen. So that was a huge setback, and we were Pakistan was caught unawares, unfortunately. So we have been mostly reactive, and unless we inject some, proactivism in our Kashmir diplomacy, I doubt very much that we can build international pressure on India. We need our ambassadors to be 24/7 on the media, going to think tanks, universities, to create awareness around the world. And that is not being done. We are talking to each other, unfortunately. People who are convinced, we are talking among ourselves. So we need to reach out, go out of our very comfortable zones. And unless we do that, I do not see as to how we can put pressure on India. So with these remarks, I will once again thank you all for inviting me. Let's keep our hopes alive, keeps our resolve alive, and let's hope that the government of Pakistan wakes up and puts up a good strategy, all-encompassing strategy to put pressure on India. And that is the key in my view. Unless India feels pressure from within occupied Kashmir and internationally, there is simply no hope that India would listen to the voices of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador Basit, for your valuable remarks on the Pakistan's Kashmir foreign policy and the way forward. Now I would like to invite Mr. Justice Ali Nawaz Chauhan for the concluding remarks. He is a former judge of Gambia, and now currently he is the honorary chairman of the Legal Forum for the Oppressed Voices of Kashmir. Over to you, sir. Justice Ali Nawaz Chauhan.
Well, assalamu alaikum. Let me start my speech by paying homage to the brave Kashmiri people who have suffered perennially atrocities initially from Dogras, later India. But the Indian case is a case of chicanery. A chicanery which has been practiced so blatantly by a country which calls itself the biggest democracy of the world. Unfortunately, it has made Kashmir as a colony because of a subjective approach of a leader like Mr. Nehru and so on, in conspiracy with the person who's done a great damage to humanity, and that was Mountbatten. And I have written articles on the conspiracies of Nehru and Mountbatten. Unfortunately, when Boris Johnson speaks in the British Parliament for the plebiscite in Kashmir, then at the same time, we feel how much of wrong was done by Mountbatten also. I wonder if his soul will rest in peace for every soul that is destroyed on the soil of Kashmir. Unfortunately, as our learned Ambassador Bassett was telling us and talking of the black sheep, it started with Abdullah, Sheikh Abdullah. He lost the opportunity. It was under the Independence Act that that Kashmir should join Pakistan, accede to Pakistan. Now, I think the Hindu Prime Minister Koch had more clarity than and more sense than Sheikh Abdullah, who, because of his friendship, gave away the opportunity and later realized that what he did was wrong. He did the wrong. And that wrong, how we have now to think how to obliterate that wrong. Well, I must say, first of all, that Kashmiris are brilliant people, brave people. When I talk of brilliance of Kashmir, I'm reminded of my days of study in New York, Rochester Center, and this book is a wonderful read for well, we learned of what is happening in Kashmir more intensely during then at the Rochester Center. So, but Kashmiris are brilliant, and the dysphoria has tried to keep the Kashmir issue alive, and it will be alive the people of Kashmir uh, are also keeping it alive. We can't leave this merely on the shoulders of the government. The people are now. When we talk of chicanery, we should also see this book, which is written by Zafrullah Khan while he was pleading the Kashmir case, how how backdoor conspiracies between British and the government of India were taking place. So, government of India, unfortunately, had played a dirty game as far as Kashmir is concerned, violating the pledges it made uh, at the time of resolution of 38 of 1948 and 39 of 1948. Uh, that is a shame. India may have a clout, it may be big, but the question is, is India fair? Is India reliable? And is India a civilized place with as far as its government is concerned, doing so much of wrong to a people uh, in Kashmir who are so helpless? Well, as far as Pakistan is concerned, I must agree with the Honorable His Excellency Ambassador Bassett that we have to do a lot. We have to do more. And let me tell you, we can't leave it to the government. We are doing it as a people, as your brethren. And if we have not done, if the Azad Kashmir government has not invoked Section 11 of the interim constitution by appointing a plebiscite officer, that makes no difference. Uh, the fact, this only shows the inaptitude and nothing more. We had the plebiscite of people appointed from Australia at the relevant time and Argentina and all, and but plebiscite never took place. India resigned from the plebiscite most shamefully, and that was very unfortunate. India can't boast of its democracy and its constitutional respects. Well, what it has done to Kashmiris is a living example of the Hindavata or the hate for the Muslims, which India is preaching, and Chankya's philosophy, which it practices. It's just telling the world it's a civilized country, but the government of India, the people are wonderful, but the government of India is terrible. Now, uh, as Ambassador Bassett has very correctly stated, that we can't leave this issue purely on rhetorics and speeches. Yes, we have to do much more. We have to do things which are practical and carry with it a message to the civilized world and informs them of the Indian occupation and the atrocities which are being committed, killings, war crimes, and all the rest. Now, this forum which we have created, which is the legal forum for oppressed voices of Kashmir, and I happen to be an honorary head of the same. We are trying to find out avenues where we can take the message forward and inform the world, inform the world the facts which are creating facts which ought to be known to them about Indian atrocities and Indian uh, going back on its words in the committed or pledged before the international forums and elsewhere. Now, I've been the chairman of the National Commission, has been my quest and desire that I invoke the constituency by addressing to the National Institution of Human Rights the world over, who work on the basis of Paris principles, being independent bodies of their respective governments and custodians of human rights for its promotion and protection. And that doesn't mean protection and promotion of human rights within a geographical unit, but throughout the world, because now human rights is a new creed, and this is accepted. And there is already forums in Geneva where legally we can contest. And this body of ours is going to really contest legally uh, about what is happening, and to ask the world to put pressure on India to stop the carnage and respect the human rights of the people of Kashmir. Besides the other commitments which India has made recurringly to respect those and go for self-determination, because that is the right which is guaranteed by the pledges India has made, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And even with pacts with Pakistan, after our two wars at least, the Tashkent Declaration, the Shimla Declaration, they still lay the emphasis on self-determination. Pakistan should do more. We are trying to raise our voice so that Pakistan should do more and more. But let me tell you, as Ambassador Basid has stated, that as a matter of fact, the consensus is there on Kashmir. There's no difference. Even if there is difference between the political parties and the polity is divided, but there's no division on Kashmir. Unfortunately, the committee which was and has therefore enabled India to carry on with its tricks and its diplomacy to eclipse in the real cause of Kashmir. But we are now again awakened, and we will be doing our best with the help of people, patriots like Mr. Bassett and so on, so that we keep this issue alive, and we try to fight the inertia if it has all happened. My own dialogues with our own government suggests that at heart they are willing to go as far as possible for resolution of this long-standing issue. But they have not been able to formulate a proper strategy. But of course, if they have not been able to do it, we as a body, which is the LFOVK, are formulating the strategy, and soon you will find us uh, heading towards solution from the legal aspect as far as that is concerned. Uh, yes, we would very much uh, ensure that we cover as much as possible uh, as far as the advocacy on the subject is concerned, and invocation of international law and United Nations laws. Uh, and I hope we'll come out with some uh, better solution to the problem. We are at it. We are not asleep. Every day, you see, the Pakistani army is confronting people at the LOC, and those who are martyred deserve our respects and salutes. They are they are holding the LOC and are paying a big price. But of course, government's policy overall will 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 be more helpful in pursuing this cause further. Unfortunately, the Muslim world is also uh, paying rather what I would say uh, not as much as it should have, and it gets offended if say if somebody says, "Oh, OIC has not done as much as it should have done." Well, they shouldn't get offended on that because that is what we call in Latin res ipsa loquitur, and they haven't done enough. Uh, Otherwise, imagine 55 countries, Muslim countries, what a power they have in wealth, in manpower, in clout, in everything. And we see that Kashmir was added to the agenda on much persuasion of our foreign minister, not that it was initially there. And then that also was not as strong worded as was the Casablanca resolution, which spelled out what has to be done in Kashmir. Of course, the amendment of Article 250 of the 1974 Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir is also something worth consideration. And I think uh, we ought to also think about it being a legal forum and make suggestions. Uh, I had the honor of meeting the president of Azad Jammu and Kashmir very recently, and we discussed what matters are to be taken up and what ought to be. And I think he is an ardent supporter uh, of many of the suggestions which have been made. And being a very experienced diplomat like Dr. Bassett, I think he is trying to do his best. His speech at the OIC was also good. That is it. But uh, I think as far as the committee is concerned here, it has also to follow suit and become more and more active. But I'm going to use this constituency of National Institution of Human Rights in informing them of the realities on the ground and the falsehood about Indian policy, which through diplomacy, clout, influence, India is telling the world we shall do it. But today's day of self-determination is being observed in Pakistan. Also, I was just coming on the Constitution Avenue and I found people demonstrating. People of Pakistan are with Kashmiris. We weep for them, we cry for them, we are devoted to them. But of course, we want that we put our energies in proper direction and with renewed strength and urge and passion, we go ahead. Dr. Basid is right in saying that we have been lacking urge and passion, but I think urge and passion should come back and we should break the inertia. I again pay my respects to the martyrs and those who are in jail, Indian jail, and condemn all actions of this huge Indian army, 1 to 5 persons in Kashmir. Uh, it is a carnage which the world must know of, and if they can resolve issues in, let's say, this former Yugoslavia, elsewhere, why don't they come forward and resolve this issue? Yes, the lady who was speaking before His Excellency Ambassador Bassett talked of the change in administration in the USA and Joe Biden coming. But we have to see how we build up pressure to persuade him to fulfill his commitment and statements he made hitherto about Kashmir, and undo what Trump has done, not only to Kashmiris but elsewhere. And I hope sanity will prevail, and the head of the world order, United States of America, would play its role and see that the Kashmir solution comes forth as soon as possible. But yet, the establishment in USA has its own policies, and sometimes these policies remain the same despite the change in administration. But Trump has done so much of wrong that Biden will have to undo all that so that the good name of constitutionalism, of liberties, of rights, as in the Bill of Rights in USA, are highlighted, and the American civilization can proudly speak of those things by ameliorating the sufferings of the people of Kashmir and other Muslims elsewhere who are suffering because of the policies and because of the aggressions, which are also coming from the West in many ways. I thank you for this opportunity. I wish Kashmiris well. I hope we'll be able to find a solution. God bless our efforts, and God bless the legal forum for fighting rights of the Kashmiris. If I were in the National Commission for Human Rights, I would have been more strong in dealing with this issue abroad and with my constituency, whom I know so well. I know Gannery, I know all the rest. But let's see what are the policies. Now, divine help will come, and I think we should pray for that. May God help us. Subhanallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Justice Ali Nawaz Chauhan, for your valuable remarks. Thank you very much for the valued and respected speakers, Professor Dr. Hamida Naeem, Ambassador Abdul Basit, Dr. Imtiaz Khan, and Dr. Asif Dar. Now, Legal Forum for the Oppressed Voices of Kashmir is honored to have host you for this webinar on this important day, 5th January, the Right to Self-Determination Day for the Kashmiris. Now, I would like to end this highly debated webinar. For that, we have 1 minute for each speaker for an operational statement for the Kashmiris and Pakistan that what should be done now. So we start with Professor Dr. Hamida Naeem. Over to you, ma'am.
She's muted. She's muted.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the question?
Ma'am, to end this debate, we have 1 minute for each speaker for an operational statement for the Kashmiris and Pakistan, that what should be done now.
I think I can once again say, in spite of the fact that there is inertia, that we have been fighting for such a long time, in Kashmiris there is terror exhaustion. We don't have to lose heart. We have to keep resisting. In resistance is our life. If we stop resisting, then we are dead, in spite of all the hardships we are facing. But Pakistan has to stand with us, because without each other, we complement each other, we complete each other. And if we don't stand together, united, and resist together, all the forces, we are bound to succeed. And we will not stop dreaming of the free Kashmir. I think someday we will, with pride, name that blessed word, which is right now seems too distant from us, but someday we will proudly actually articulate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to ask Dr. Imtiaz Khan. Over to you, sir.
Well, the question is Pakistan has a very, very important role to play. Like was said by the speaker, that this inertia has to be broken up and there has to be national consensus. The people demonstrating on the streets of Pakistan, it's fine. It heartens Kashmir, but that will not solve the problem. And another issue I want to tell, don't keep high hopes on Joe Biden. The international policies of America doesn't change. If you look at Obama, when he was a candidate, Obama, he had promised a special ambassador, but when he came to power, he visited India twice, did go Pakistan once, and basically didn't do anything for Kashmir. We have the hope, we are Muslims, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let the sacrifices of Kashmir to go waste. And we will, as Professor Hamida Naeem says, we will one day see free Kashmir. But people are dying. They are suffering from the undescribed atrocities of this administration, the fascist regime of Modi, who want to change the whole character of Kashmir demography. Pakistan has to be hyper aggressive. There is no, they say there's a national, one of the speakers said, I think it was Justice Chauhan or something, national consensus. No, sir, I disagree with you. There's no national consensus on Kashmir. They are playing partisan politics, and they have to rise above the partisan politics, take a united stand, and have a both long-term and short-term strategy of Kashmir. Evaluate this strategy off and on, where we have succeeded, where we have failed. The Saudi Arabia and Dubai, UAE should not, and Modi as the guest of whatever the citizens honor Modi, they should have basically, that means they were not well acquainted about the Kashmir problem, and they have to understand Kashmir problem. They have to basically appoint a committee of diplomats, high-ranking diplomats like Ambassador Bassett, who can advise them of the Kashmir. That is not going on. Unless that happens, Kashmir issue will not improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Asif Dar. Over to you, sir. Dr. Asif Dar. Okay. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ambassador Abdul Basit for the operational statement. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I can only say that losing hope is no option, and we must continue striving. Obviously, freedom, to get freedom, it can take 10 years, it can take a century, but we should not be losing hope. If I at all, my first, I think to begin with, Pakistan, as I said, needs to up the ante. And the first step in that direction would be to appoint a special envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, because that is, we need to have a focal point. and that in why he or she should be allowed to put up all aspect dimensions of the Kashmir dispute, legal, diplomatic, political resistance together. And we need to move forward methodically like the Indians are doing. And doing things on Kashmir episodically in fits and starts here and there would take us nowhere in my view. These statements, these demonstrations, rallies are should be part of those strategies. But unfortunately, we have been working on optics, but have lost substance in the process. So unless optics and substance come together, there is simply no hope. So my first and the only recommendation to begin with would be that Pakistan government should be appointing a special envoy on Jammu and Kashmir so that we have a solid strategy in place in both its internal and external dimensions. I fully agree with you that people who pining hopes on Joe Biden, the next administration, it's not a shoe in. Joe Biden, we all know where he comes from. So we have a very huge task ahead, but we should not be losing hope. We should put our act together. We still have, we can do many things still. I'm confident of that. But it just needs, to get out of this inertia. And I think these forums like these should be working to build pressure on Islamabad to be doing things in the right way. And this inertia should come to an end because time is of the essence. If we lose too much time, then perhaps there will nothing be left nothing be left to be taken care of. So time is of the essence. We should be doing things as they deserve, and let's hope that the government of Pakistan is listening to us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Now, thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador Abdul Basit. Now, I would like to thank you all who have joined us today for the webinar, and especially our guest speakers for their time on today's important topic on the Kashmir issue. We hope to have you again in our next webinars. Until then, bye-bye. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you very much. Allah
Thank you
Hafiz.
very much. Thanks.
ये कौन था बंदा?
सर ये